Hey everybody, and welcome back to a really unique video where I'm going to be covering the basics of figuring out if ChatGPT can help us to build an actual website builder. So before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe and check out the channel for new content. Now, for those of you that are here to the channel or the video for the first time, I do tons of different videos, both on making coded apps without coding knowledge, but also using tools like AppGyver to build full mobile apps without needing to know any code whatsoever. So whether you're technical or not, there are tons of resources for you on the channel and over at codelessfix.com. All right, so let's just go ahead and jump straight in. So we have a sample option or app here. So what basically this is going to allow users to do, and again, we have to refine this a ton to make it worthwhile. But the idea here is if you drag over a button, for example, and you could put these wherever you wanted, maybe you want to add in a picture. If you click this Make It button, you'll see that we get this web page here. Now, obviously, this UI is not great, and there's a lot that we need to fix. So we're going to try to answer the question today of if ChatGPT can actually help us to build a website builder. So let's go ahead and jump in to the ChatGPT prompts I used to get us here. So again, this is going to be from the perspective of not knowing code whatsoever. So you'll see over here on the right-hand side is the final code that is for this current web builder here. So what we're going to do, we're going to open a new page and we're going to cut all of this code and paste it in here just so we don't lose it. And then we're going to hit save over here just to show you the file is our index file on the desktop. So what we have on the right is an open Notepad++ document with no text. This is saved to the desktop as index.html, and then we have that file opened here. So as those changes are made on the right, they will show on the left. So what we're going to do now is we're going to check the requirements. So I've asked ChatGPT, write me code for a website that functions as a website builder. Now, I had a couple things I wanted to specify. I want a section on the left for the components section, and I gave it a name so that when I refer to this in the future, ChatGPT knows what I'm talking about. Then I also specified that we need a larger section on the right for the canvas. Users will be able to drag components, so I'm specifying I want a drag and drop style interface, and a Make It button, which will create an HTML page. Then I specify the components that I need. So most websites have a couple main components, so that's why I stuck with these 5. If you start saying I want these 25 different components, ChatGPT likely is not going to be able to finish the code. Additionally, going through and debugging is going to be a pain, and you'll see why in a bit. So we specify these components because most websites have text and a title. They'll have a divider of some kind potentially, a picture, and a button. That covers the basics. There are obviously other features and functionality that you could add. So what we got in the beginning was this here. So I will copy this code and paste it into Notepad, and we're going to go to save, and then we're going to refresh our page. Now, right away, this may look like what we had previously, but I'm going to show you where we have a couple of issues that need to be fixed. So first, we're going to start with just dragging the components over. Now, here's where you shouldn't be too critical of ChatGPT because we are asking a lot. Additionally, we haven't really specified that the component needs to be a divider once it's dragged in. So if you look at our requirements, we specified they can drag and edit the text. So this is not working as expected, and that is a requirement. But we haven't clearly stated exactly, or we haven't articulated, when you drag text over, it needs to become this text field that a user can edit, so there is some obvious room for error there. So when I click Make It, we want to make sure that all the functionality works start to finish, and it does. We are, at the very least, getting an exported page, and drag and drop is working. So now, what I asked ChatGPT next, I started off by saying this is a good interface because I don't want that changed. Now I just want to update the code, and here's a recommendation when you're going through with ChatGPT, try to keep things at a moderate level of complexity. If you start out with too many requirements, it seems to miss the mark a little bit more than when you start out with a moderate amount. So for example, originally I had much more content than this, but I wasn't getting what I wanted, and by slimming it down a bit, I noticed that I'm getting things that are a little bit closer to what I'm looking for. So let's see what I said next. I said update the code so the components are components and not just text. Now this is obviously very generic, and honestly a lot of systems I'd be surprised if they understood this, but I also specify text and title need to allow the user to type text. Now there is a much better way to explain this, but we just want to see what we're getting from ChatGPT. Now you'll see right now we are not getting a complete code snippet, so we did have to ask ChatGPT to finish it for us. So you'll see when I paste it, it stops down at the bottom right here. So I tried to pick a starting point that's easy for me to understand and said, okay, start from here. And then you'll see that it does exactly what we asked. It doesn't always, but what we'll do is we will paste in right over where we had previously, and just to avoid indentations, let's again act like we don't know what we're doing. Now we're going to refresh this page and see what changes have been made. So if we drag a title over, we can now type in text, but the second we type in a letter, it automatically stops. When we start typing in a letter here, you'll see it immediately just keeps the component as it is, but at least we are making some progress. So now let's click Make It, and you'll see we have our text here. It doesn't let us type in full text, but we are at least a step closer. So we are getting there. So what we need to do now is see what we've asked next. So when we rewrite this, we need the picture component to be a picture and not text, because currently when the picture is dragged over, it's just this text field. And the button needs to be an HTML button, and you'll see if we drag a button over now, it's also just text. Now again, this is not very specific. You would typically want to have some more clear requirements, but let's see what it gives us. So we have this larger portion, and then you'll see I said finish from this section here. And so you'll see that we have our divider component equals. So in this case, sometimes what you can do is kind of scroll through the code and see, okay, did it finish from exactly where we needed it to? So you can look on the left-hand side and see I state divider component, and you basically would just want to look for that here. So I have divider component equals document create element. This is where I told it to pick up. And then you'll see we have create button component, and then it starts specifying the button component. So in this case, it didn't pick up exactly where I left off, so I'm just kind of guessing that it's finishing right here. So we'll copy this, and it's not as user-friendly when we're copying from, when we're not working out of those like code text boxes, but we'll paste this in, and then we'll grab the remainder, and then we'll paste that, and we'll save it and refresh our page. Doesn't look like anything's too broken. So you'll see the dividers are working, the text is working, the picture is now a picture. So when we click Make It, we now have an actual divider line. The text box obviously needs some work, but then we have a picture. So now we can see what the next step was. And in my opinion, the interface is pretty solid overall. I mean, obviously, if we were to make something more robust, it would take a ton of code. And this is part of the reason that I was mentioning earlier that doing some of these projects that are very complex with ChatGPT can be a pain. Because if you need revisions to the code, this code here takes this entire chat box and then another. Imagine if you had 10 of these. You would have to constantly be asking ChatGPT, finish starting here, revise this, and it could get very, very difficult, especially if you don't know code. So let's just continue on and kind of show exactly how we got to our end state. So we have to ensure the components appear in the same order, because right now I don't like that it's always in this line. it's going to give us new code. And in this case, you'll see, again, we specified they are added in an order, and it appears to be top down. So I asked it to rewrite this code, so I'll paste it on the right-hand side. And then it got hung up starting at the create element h2. So in this case, you can scroll through, and you'll see we have create element h2. So you'll see we have return divider component. And then you can scroll through, and you'll see that we have the divider component here. And I didn't like where it was starting from or finishing from, so I asked it to finish again. And you'll see we have the create title component, and we have create title component. And I had an issue with this code, so basically just said, hey, start from scratch. So we have the first half of the code, and then I asked it to start from the second half of the code, and you'll see I had another issue with the location not being correct. So instead of constantly copying and pasting, we'll just walk through what we've done next, but you'll see at this point, instead of giving the entire code, it's just giving pieces here and there. So in this case, if we were to hit Control F on our document on the right and type in drop, you'll see that we have a drop event, but we also have a function which basically defines what this is. So we have function drop event. So we can type in function drop, and then you'll see right here we have that event. So without knowing HTML, it would be very difficult to manage this, but in this case, it's telling us this function is defined here. And you'll see it's kind of on this line. So it's saying, okay, this is what the drop event looks like. Here's what we need to change it to. So in this case, you may need to change the entire event. It may give you certain pieces, but we'll see that this function, for example, if I click here, you can typically see all of the other functions in the page. If you were to click here, you can see this line goes up to this function line. So this is basically where it stops. So we would be pasting this over top of our current code, and you'll see that I'm still not getting it to allow users to specify the text and title. So basically at this point, we're having some issues just like we have here. So we are asking it to specify again, and I asked it to rewrite the entire code and then finish the code. And then I had to say 2 revisions back, it was better. So here's a point where I basically wasn't making any progress with ChatGPT, and it retyped the code for me, and it ended up making it much, much worse. So what I did was, and what I would recommend for you as you're going through making revisions, save a copy. So just like we did here, this was the one that worked the best for me. So I took the one that worked the best that I had previously saved and pasted all of it in, and then at the very bottom, I said, this is the code that works that you gave me, just so ChatGPT knows what to reference. And then you'll see it says, basically, here's the fixed code. I asked it to finish the code, and we'll see what it gave us and kind of how we were able to get this entered in. So we're going to delete everything in our page, paste in what ChatGPT gave us, and you'll see it didn't finish. So I said finish starting from this text. And you'll see we have function create title component, which is right here. So what I do in these cases is I literally just cut all of that and paste in the new code and save it. In this case, we will refresh the page. Now let's see if we've made some progress. Now we have what we've been working with since basically the beginning of the video. And that is, basically we can start by typing in a letter, but it stops. But it's better than the last revision where users couldn't type in anything. And now you'll see we have that letter here and that letter here. So if we wanted to, just to show you, again, we're nowhere near being finished with this, but if we started off with the title, we could say H, and then you could say E, And obviously it's much more difficult because the location is not correct. But once we click Make It, the page is actually looking like a web page. So there's a ton of changes that need to be made, but I had a bit of an issue. You'll see the text and title components only allow the user to type one letter, and I wasn't able to get much of a response to actually get this to start working. So you'll see it's giving more respective parts, but rather than continuing to kind of fight with it, what I want to do is show you all why I don't think that this is necessarily suited to make something or a product this big just yet. So what we have been able to build is a very, very high-level MVP for a website builder. It'll actually make HTML code or HTML pages. Users can drop in all these components, click Make It. The divider doesn't appear, but everything else is appearing. So you could give this, if you wanted, another go through ChatGPT or several to kind of refine it further. But the general idea is it can help you to build an actual high-level website builder. And I think if you spent a lot more time refining it, you could get it to actually drop the components where you want them, add in functionality to move them once they've been dropped, add in more letters. You can see how far we've gotten, and this ChatGPT thread, although it is long, is not terribly lengthy. So it is something that you can work with and refine a bit more. So I do think that it's possible, but I think it would take quite a bit of time. So I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment box below, and I'll see you all in the next video.